Good morning. Just sipping some coffee and thinking about doing some fishing today. You know, it's really hard to see much of anything when you got these fancy fishing hats all covered over your eyes. But once again, good morning. Mr. Tim here with a special kind of story time today. Of course, all of our story times are special. What do British sea monsters eat? Fish and ships. Huh? 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 What kind of fish do lionfish chase the most? Zebrafish. That one's terrible, that one. Why don't fish do well on school tests? Because they're always at sea level. Get it? Sea or sea level? You like the visuals with that? All right, I got more of those great jokes coming up because I know you're excited about that, but I also have stories to tell. Today's theme, of course, is fishing stories. It's that time of year, and you know, fishing is actually, and always has been, a wonderful, socially distant kind of activity. When you want to get away from it all, and you want to get away from all the people in your life, and just kind of escape, you can go and you can fish. As an old comedian used to say, there's a fine line between fishing and just standing on the banks of the river with a stick in the water. But fishing's a lot of fun. I like to do it. I've gotten to fish a lot, and I'm actually going to try fly fishing for the very first time in my life. I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm going to give that a try here real soon. But anyway, welcome everybody to Story Time with Mr. Tim on this beautiful Tuesday morning. If we've got some friends out there who want to give us a shout out, please feel free to do so. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget that everything that we read during story time are library books, and you can still put items on hold and come pick them up for our curbside service at the Charlestown Library. We've had a lot of people coming and picking up a lot of stuff, so I'm glad to see folks are still taking advantage of our services. Also, don't forget about Hoopla, which is our online service. That's 24/7. So if you want to go and download something digitally, you can get that from Hoopla. Just go to our website, ctlreads.org, and you can find out information on Hoopla and get a free ebooks to read, up to 7 a month. So that's quite a few. Somebody says good morning, and that's the Charlestown Library. Well, good morning, Charlestown Library. That's run by my good friend, Mr. Brian. Shh, don't say his name out loud. Mr. Brian runs our website for us, and he's always here making sure that people say hello. So if we have other folks there, please feel free to give us a shout out. Give us a like, like and share. We know a lot of people do that because we've got fans all over the country and all over the world, really, that watch our story times. Let's see, we've got Jeff. Hi, Jeff. Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you're all ready for some fish stories, or not fish tales, these are stories about fishing and fish. And there's a lot of good, there's some really excellent illustrations in here. And of course, being where we are here in the West Virginia, lots of great fishing spots in our home state. Well, hello there, Bland. Welcome. My good friend Bland is here. Good morning, Bland. Bland loves fishing too. I know Bland's a fisherman. So this first one is called Granddad's Fishing Buddy. And this one is by Mary Quigley and illustrated by Stefan Jorish. So this one is Granddad's Fishing Buddy. So if you have a granddad and they've ever taken you fishing, you might be able to relate to this story. Not all granddads do like to fish, but some do, and this is a great story about it. So I tried not to fall asleep, staying overnight at Grandmama and Granddad's cottage on the lake. Ooh, look at her. She's trying so hard to sleep. I had it all figured out, listening to owls, counting stars, playing shadow games, way past my bedtime. I wasn't going to miss anything. So you can see there's a nice little cabin in the woods, no one else around. Staying awake is how I knew when Granddad scuffed down the hallway while the sky was still blue-black and the stars shone like nightlights. "Why are you up in the night?" I asked him. "I could ask you the same thing," he said. I followed him to the kitchen and watched as he made breakfast and put his vest on. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Meeting my fishing buddy," he said. "Ooh, fishing. Can I come too?" Granddad started to shake his head, then stopped long enough to take a good look at me. I stood just as tall as I could, so I would look every bit as old as he was. "Can you keep it real quiet so the fish don't know we're there?" he asked. "You bet," I said. "Can you row the boat without making it turn in circles?" "With my eyes closed," I told him. He raised one eyebrow, and I quickly added, "But I promise to keep them open." "Can you put a worm on a hook?" I hesitated a minute, not sure about that one, but I took a deep breath and said, "No problem." Granddad seemed to add it all up in his head. He put on his favorite fishing hat, then left a note for Grandmama. "Gone fishing. See you for lunch. Love, Ed and Sarah." "Yippee!" I hooted, then remembered the part about being quiet and whispered, "Yippee!" We pushed off the dock with a splash, sending ripples across the glassy lake. Steam lifted from the water like clouds. Way out on the lake, it was quiet, except for the smooth sound of fishing lines sailing through the air and landing with a plop in the water. "Watch close," Granddad said. That's how I learned. I had almost forgotten about Granddad's fishing buddy, and it seemed he had too. I asked, "Why did we leave without your buddy?" "He'll meet us out here," Granddad said. We were the first boat on the lake, but just as the ducks and geese flew in, one by one, boats began to roost on the rippled water. Granddad knew everyone. He smiled and waved. Sometimes they traded fishing secrets, sometimes a joke. He pointed to me and said, "This is my granddaughter, Sarah. She's a keeper." "Was that your fishing buddy?" I asked after each person passed by. "Nope," he said time after time. Then we always got quiet again, so the fish would come. Granddad reached out into a bucket of dirt and pulled out a worm that coiled around as it swayed from his fingertips. In his other hand, he carefully held the hook. I looked at the hook, then the worm, then back again. I needed a plan. I remembered the licorice that Grandmama had filled my pockets with yesterday. I pulled out a little bit and slid it onto the hook. I smiled very nervously at Granddad, expecting him to stop me. He didn't, and I was glad. We waited a long time. Our fishing lines hung in the water like the tails of fallen kites. Suddenly, a shadow skimmed over the lake. A heron glided over our heads and landed near the lily pads. He stood statue still, watching the water. In a blink, he plucked a fish right out. Herons are pretty smooth. Granddad smiled. He said, "Row." "Which way?" I asked. "Over there," he said, pointing to where the heron balanced on one skinny leg. The heron eyed us both quickly, then gazed into the water. He waited, stirring up more fish. We cast our lines near the heron. My bobber went under. I held tight to my pole, and I wound the reel just like Granddad. "I caught one!" I hollered. "It's a beauty," cheered Granddad. He was real proud, I could tell, but he wanted to catch one too. "You'll get one," I told him. I put a piece of licorice on his hook. Look, she got a fish right there. If you can all see the fish she caught, that's a pretty good sized fish. After a while, the heron flew away. I squeezed my eyes nearly shut, trying to follow his flight into the bright sky. He swooped and landed near the opposite shore. "Row," said Granddad. This time I knew exactly where. We followed the heron. Right then I figured out who Granddad's fishing buddy was. The best fisherman on the lake. We caught lots of fish that day. Granddad, the heron, and I. While we tied the boat to the pier, I asked Granddad, "When are you going out with your fishing buddy again?" He winked, put his big fishing hat on my head, and said, "When are you coming back to the lake?" And look, I even framed it, Sarah's first catch right there. So it turned out, as you probably all guessed early on, that Sarah was Granddad's fishing buddy, and he was so excited to get to go fishing with Sarah. All right, you guys ready for another one? This one's a little bit sillier. I enjoy this one. Of course, you know, no good fisherman when he goes out fishing is without his thermos and his mug of hot coffee. Or, if you were like when I was younger, hot chocolate. Who likes hot chocolate out there? Huh? Anybody? Anybody? I think we have some more folks here to say hello to. Let's see, we have Lydia. Hello, Lydia. Thanks for coming and joining us for story time. Like I say, anyway, don't be shy. Please feel free to give a shout out to say your name, and we'll always say it here during story time. Where does a fish keep his money or her money? The river bank. Huh? The river bank. How do fish always seem to know their weight? Well, duh, they have scales. Huh? Yeah, they're good. Yeah, this live thing is really nice, but my gosh, I can't hear all the thunderous roars of applause and laughter to every joke that I'm sure is happening out there. All right, we ready for another one? This one is called Come Home Already. Come Home Already. It's a big bear. Jory John and Benji Davies wrote this one. Another glorious morning full of possibilities. I wonder what Old Bear is up to. Get ready for some more fun times, Bear. Knock, knock. I think that's a duck. That looks like a duck. That's a duck. That's a duck, right? That's a duck. Gone fishing, says the sign. Back next week. Wait a minute, says the duck. Bear's gone fishing? He's back next week? Bear's gone fishing? He's back next week? He's gone fishing without me, but next week? Fishing? Oh. Ah, yes. This is the life. There's our bear. We're cutting to the bear scene. This is the life. Alone with my thoughts. No pesky neighbors knocking on my door at all hours. It's nice to be by myself for once. Ah. So you can see they did a little trail here. There's the bear's house. He's walked all this trail into the woods, more trees, another tree, favorite camping spot right down there by the lake is where the bear is. And then Duck's having a bad time. He says, it's okay, it's all right, it's not even a big deal. So Bear left me and I'm all alone. Oh, I'll be fine. Yes, I'm just fine. After all, I can entertain myself, says the duck. Well, the duck looks kind of worried, doesn't he? I'll read. No, I'll cook a big meal. No, I'll write a letter. There he is, writing the letter. No, I'll play the drums. I'll watch a movie. I'll read. Oh, wait, I already said that. Sigh. I really don't feel like doing any of these things. I miss my friend. Come home already, Bear! I'm just so bored. I wonder what old Bear is doing right this second. I bet he's having so much fun without me. Now we cut to Bear. Oh, there's got to be an easier way to set up a tent. Ah, never mind. I'll figure it out later. Time for some fishing. Oh, darn, it's starting to rain. I don't like to get my fur wet. I haven't caught a single fish, and I forgot to bring snacks. I missed my refrigerator. Oh, I'm drenched. I'm hungry. I don't know how to start a campfire. I'm just so tired. Poor Bear's having a rough time. Duck's having a half time. How do you think this is going to resolve itself? Look at them. Both of them at the same time, Duck and Bear. Sigh. There's really only one thing to do, says Duck. I have to catch up with Bear. He'll surely need my help. After all, I know how to catch a fish with my beak. Also, I'm great company. Fishing can be really lonely. Plus, it's raining. Gotta find Bear. Gotta find Bear. It's getting dark. I gotta find Bear. The woods are scary at night. Oh, what was that noise? It was probably nothing. Just think about other things, Bear. Just think about other things. Nothing to worry about here. Nothing to worry about at all. Uh-oh, what is it? What does that look like? Ah! Bear, it's me, Duck, from next door. I found you, old buddy, old pal, old chum. Are you hungry? Are you cold? Are you scared? Why were you screaming? Why was I screaming? Duck, is it really you? How did you find me? I wanted you to come home, so I tracked you through the woods. Missed you. Come home already, Bear. Duck, I'm actually so relieved to see you. You are? Absolutely. Please stay. Keep me company. We can go back home together in the morning. That sounds wonderful, Bear. Perfect. Sublime. I actually thought you wanted to get away from me. Let me help you get set up. I'm good at building tents and making fires, and we can roast these marshmallows I bought. Camping is so much better with a friend, Bear. Yes, I can see that, Duck. This is nice, isn't it, Bear? I was asleep, Duck. Good morning, Bear. Huh? Oh, yes. Good morning, Duck. So, before I found you, did you catch any fish, Bear? No. Did you enjoy the rain? No. Did you have fun? No. Did you make any friends? No. Did you catch any fish? You already said that. Well, I'm very glad you're home, Bear. Next time you want to go camping, give me a ring. I'll come along. I'll always be by your side, Bear. Always and forever. Always and forever. So it just goes to show you, sometimes it's good to have friends around, and friends are always great, but sometimes we just want to have a little bit of alone time, right? Sometimes it's good just to have a little alone time. So any kids out there watching, sometimes, when things start getting out of hand and mom and dad are bothering you, or your brothers and sisters are driving you nuts, just say, I'm going to go to my room. I'm just going to go to my room and just relax and lay down. Maybe I'll read a little book, look at some pictures, listen to some music, whatever. So go and take some time for yourself. It's always advisable. All right, who else we have? We have Misty. Hello, Misty. Thank you for joining us this morning. Hello to all of our friends out there. I still got a couple more stories to go if you're interested. We want some more stories. What's that? No, Tim, we want more jokes. We want more fish jokes. Oh, all right, I'll do what I can do. What is the difference between a piano and a fish? Well, you can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish. That's an old one. But it's not an old one. It's not an oldie, but a goodie. It's not a goodie. Here's one. What do fish use for money? Sand dollars, huh? Where do moms keep their money? In their octopurse. Oh, I should have said, where do fish moms? Pretend like the last 10 seconds never happened. I'll try that again. Everybody, take two. There we go. Where do mom fish keep their money? In their octopurse. That's funny the second time, right? Yeah, okay, whatever. Oh boy, we have 3 kids watching over here. Hi, Angie, nice to see you. And hello to your kids. Good to see you, kids. Hope you all like fishing stories. This next one is called A Good Day's Fishing. This one's by James Prosek, who also wrote a book called, just a single word, Trout. So fishing for trout. A lot of trout to catch in the rivers and the lakes here in West Virginia. So hopefully I'll catch me one of those, a good rainbow trout. They're tasty too. A Good Day's Fishing by James Prosek. Beautiful illustrations in this book, I gotta say. This is my tackle box. What I need for a good day's fishing is in here somewhere. Look at all that tackle, all the stuff you need when you go fishing. It's not this. This is called a spinner. It spins around and attracts fish attention. I used it to catch a yellow perch. We're going to get a primer on fish types now too. So when you see these, you'll say, I know what kind of fish that is. And this is a Phoebe spoon. It flashes in the water. That kind of, this kind of lure right there. I caught pumpkin seed sunfish on it in old Farmer Cashelli's pond. I hooked a crappie too, but it got away. Fish sometimes do that. This is just some line. Yeah, I'll get to that sometime. These are my bobbers and swivels to make things float. These are my sinkers to make things go down. Those are the weights, those are the bobbers. I use bobbers and sinkers to catch carp. You can see a picture of a carp right there in a pond swimming around. Gotta just kind of let the bait hang there to catch them. And these are my hooks. Aren't they cool? Hooks are good. Hooks are what you want to catch fish, but they're dangerous. You got to be careful. You don't want to hurt yourself. Here's an old sandwich. What was I looking for again? This is an eel. How did he get in there? Here's my fly rod and my fly reel and my rubber fish lure. I never get anything on that. If I dig deeper, maybe I'll find it. Well, at least I have my plugs. I use them to catch largemouth bass. Ooh, look at those big largemouth bass fish. And these are my flies, tied from furs and feathers. They're for catching my favorite fish, brook trout. Ah, more stories about trout. What I really need isn't in my wrench or my tape measure or my lucky lure. It's my hat. Oh, look, he's got a hat kind of like my hat. Isn't that something? That's the most important thing sometimes you need is a fishing hat. And if you know the word superstitious, if you ever hear people talk about superstitions or being superstitious, or if you hear people talk about luck or things being lucky or lucky, a lot of fishermen have a lot of superstitions. Like they won't go fishing on certain days of the week, or they won't go fishing at certain times of day, or they have to have a certain hat. Well, it looks like our little friend there, he's got his special lucky fishing hat. So that would be considered a fun superstition. Sometimes some superstitions are fun and funny. They're okay. Who do we have? We have Lila. Hello, Lila. And Kim, welcome. Thank you all for coming in and joining us. I tell you what, I got another story here. Another story. This one's about a bunny. A bunny. These are some old stories. Old. These go back to the 1980s is when these books were written, and that might be old for some of you, but it's not that old for me. Bear with me. I have to get some of that camping, good old-fashioned camping. There's no coffee tastes as good as the kind of coffee that you get when you go out camping and fishing. So, welcome to everybody out there. You know, my friend with the Charlestown Library, he wrote, "You got us hooked on these stories, Mr. Tim." Yeah, that was a bad one. Maybe you should just stick to the running the electric, the social media stuff. That was a bad one. That was a really bad one. Not near as good as the jokes that I tell. Like how did the mollusk get into college? Huh? On a scallop ship, huh? See, that's funny. What kind of guitar do fish play, huh? This is a funny one. Bass or bass. See, those are funny. Those are funny. It's okay. I forgive you, Charlestown Library. All right. So this one is supposed to be funny, too. This one is Loudmouth George and the Fishing Trip by Nancy Carlson. This one's kind of a small one, so I got to make sure I hold the pictures way up close to you there. George was always bragging. According to him, he ran the fastest, and he ate the biggest pizzas, and he read the thickest books. So when Harriet told him she was going fishing on Saturday, of course, George bragged that he caught the biggest fish. So it looks like George is a bunny and his friend Harriet is a doggy. "If you're such a good fisherman," said Harriet, "why don't you come with us?" "I'd better not," said George. "I'd probably catch such a big fish it would sink the boat." Harriet didn't believe him for a minute. When she got home, she asked her dad if George could come with them on Saturday. "Sure," said Dad. "I'll give his parents a call." "Guess what, George?" said George's mother. "Harriet's father just called and invited you to go fishing tomorrow. Won't that be fun?" Look at George. He looks a little nervous, doesn't he? Because he was bragging about what a great fisherman he was. "Oh, no," thought George. "Why did I brag so much? The biggest fish I ever caught was in the pet shop." Early the next morning, they were off to the river. George, I brought an extra fishing rod if you need it, said Harriet's mother. Look at George in the back seat there. He's a little bit nervous because he's bragging about what a great fisherman he was. As a matter of fact, I do. You see, the last time I went fishing, I hooked this enormous fish. It was so big it broke my fishing rod, George bragged. Do you think George is telling the truth? At last, they went out on the water. Here's a worm for your hook, George, said Harriet. I thought you'd fished before, said Harriet. Well, I have, George fibbed, but we didn't use worms, we used other stuff. So Harriet baited George hooks. Then they sat. And they sat. And they sat. They sat for 3 hours, and no one even got a nibble. I think we'll call it a day, said Harriet's father. The fish just aren't biting today. Thank heaven, thought George as he started to reel in his line. Suddenly his bobber went down. You've got a fish, George, yelled Harriet. Oh, well, said George. Help! Help! What do I do? I thought you were a great fisherman, said Harriet. I guess I exaggerated a little bit, George confessed. Help me! Oh, boy. Keep reeling it in, George, Harriet told him. It's the biggest fish ever, yelled George. You almost have it, George, said Harriet. Just keep reeling. It's so big it will bite my hand off, yelled George. Here it comes, said Harriet. Oops, said George. Better throw it back, George, said Harriet. It's too little to keep. Look at that tiny little fish. He was all scared of that tiny little fish. Well, they can feel a lot stronger than you'd think when it's your first fish. Well, it felt big, said George. Monday at school, George told Ralph all about the fishing trip. I caught a fish and it was this big, he said. Look how big he's saying that fish was. How big, George? Said Harriet. Well, it was this big, said George. How big? Well, maybe it was only this big, said George. But it sure put up a big fight. That one's a cute one, isn't it? I like that one. George, the exaggerator, learned if you're going to have witnesses, you better get your story straight. All right, we had Diane joining us, and we had Ashley. Ashley and Diane. Well, welcome, Ashley and Diane. I tell you what, since we have some new folks joining us, and we have a few more minutes, I've got one more story. Another one about a big fish. This one's got lots of very realistic illustrations in it. A lot of words, but we'll do this one. It's called The Biggest Fish in the Lake. This one is written by Margaret Carney and illustrated by Janet Wilson. Janet Wilson does a great job of illustrating our books for us. So, biggest fish in the lake. Whenever I'm at Grandpa's farm and the weather's right and the chores are done, Grandpa and I go fishing. In the spring, we fish for speckled trout in the stream running through the pasture. When summer comes, we jig for catfish in the pond. In fall, we dangle our lines from the bridge over the river, hoping a fat walleye will grab in our bait. In winter, we cut a hole through the ice at the lake and fish for nice big lake trout. We never know what's lurking in that green underwater world, Grandpa says, or when it will seize our hook. That's half the fun of fishing. And while we're waiting for a strike, we talk. We tell each other stories or just gaze into the water and listen to the wind. That, Grandpa says, is the best part of all. I've always used an old bamboo pole to fish, but this year for my birthday, I got a huge surprise from Grandpa. A spinning rod of my very own. I hugged him so hard around his whiskery neck that he laughed and said I might strangle him. Can we put it together now? I begged. Grandpa's eyes twinkled. Let's see how that reel clamps on there, he answered. We fitted the rod and reel together, threaded the line through the eyes, and tied on a practice plug. Then we hurried out to the barnyard to try it. My new rod was almost as long as Grandpa's. It felt light and bouncy as I held it and he showed me, swung it back over my shoulder, then flipped it forward. The line went spinning into space, where I reeled it in and cast again. Grandpa found an old bicycle tire in the woodshed and laid it in the snow. "Try aiming for this," he said. "When you can hit the target 2 times out of 3, I'll give you a lure and we'll go on a fishing trip for bass." Bass! Grandpa's best stories were about fishing for bass. I was so excited that on the very next cast I got my line tangled up in that hedge. All spring I practiced casting in my backyard in the city. When I went to the farm on weekends, I practiced at the pond. By the time school was almost out for the summer, I could hit that tire 2 times out of 3, and Grandpa said we should plan our fishing trip. We decided to go at the end of June on the opening day of bass season. I could hardly wait. Finally, the big day dawned. After loading all our gear into Grandpa's car, we drove a long way north through the deep green woods, perfumed with pine, to a cabin on a secluded lake. The minute we arrived, we carried our fishing tackle down to the dock and fastened a small motor on the boat moored there. We tied silvery lures onto our lines for trolling. Grandpa said the lures would shimmer in the dark water like minnows swimming behind the boat. As we chugged slowly up the wind-ruffled lake, trailing our lines, we munched on sandwiches and Grandma's chocolate chip cookies. "Look at that big bird, Grandpa, it's diving!" I cried. "An osprey fishing for lunch for its babies," he answered. The osprey flew off with a fat sucker clasped in its claws. Look at that. Other birds were fishing too. As the afternoon sun moved slowly westward, glittering on the waves, we saw a pair of loons, a great blue heron, and a kingfisher. "Where there are fish for birds, there'll be fish for us," Grandpa said. He caught and released a sunfish and 2 perch. All I caught were weeds. After supper, the wind dropped and we headed for some steep rocks along the far shore. From deep black pools, bass were rising for insects, sending rings of ripples across the glassy surface. Here we used hinged floating lures that jerked like swimming frogs as we reeled them in, a little at a time. I was glad we didn't have to use real frogs. Before long, Grandpa caught a fair-sized bass, but he put it back. If everyone kept all the fish they hooked, there'd be nothing left but the little ones, he said. Then Grandpa caught a bigger bass, the perfect size for breakfast. I was beginning to think I'd never catch a fish when the water near my lure exploded and my rod bent over as if it would break. I yanked up, trying to set the hook, but the big bass that had snapped at my lure leaped in the air and twisted its head, shaking the hook from its mouth. "Wow, what a whopper!" Grandpa explained. "You almost had a big one." Almost wasn't good enough. I wanted to catch my first bass. I wanted to be just like Grandpa, the greatest fisherman in the world. We stayed out on the boat till the evening star glimmered over the tips of the dark pines, but we never got another strike. Tired and chilly, we finally headed back to the cabin to go to bed. Look at that bass. She almost caught that one, but now they're ready to go to bed. I must have been dreaming about catching a fish, for I woke with a start at dawn. Slipping on my sweater, I went out to the porch without waking Grandpa. The sky was nearly pink and the air was still. The lake was like smooth gray satin, until, all at once, at the end of the dock, a big fish turned in the water. I grabbed my fishing rod and raced down to the shore, tiptoeing onto the dock. I cast toward where the fish had jumped and started slowly reeling in my line. Nothing happened. I cast to the right again and reeled in. Taking a deep breath, I cast a third time, toward the weeds near the shore. With a sudden jerk, my rod flew forward, nearly yanked from my hands. Then my reel was screaming as the line played out. The huge fish had grabbed my lure and was swimming away with it. I could feel the creature's power as it swam, straight toward the weeds where it could tangle the line and escape. I planted my feet and pulled back as hard as I could. If I reeled it in too quickly, the fish would break the line. Slowly I wound in a bit, then let the fish swim out. I drew it in again and let it go out the other way. Back and forth it darted, tugging on my line until my arms grew tired. But that fish was tiring too. When I finally reeled it in close enough to glimpse, I almost dropped my rod. The fish wasn't stout and muscular like a bass. It was long and slim, with a narrow snout and sharp teeth, and it was big. It was a muskie. He's kind of scary looking, I think. I didn't have a net, so I carefully drew the muskie along the dock toward the shore, keeping tension on the line like Grandpa taught me. When I got the fish to the shallows, I jumped into the water right behind it. With a flip of its tail, the muskie leaped toward the beach. Half in and half out of the water, it lay on its side, panting. Heart pounding, I stared in wonder at the fish, from its glaring eye to its long fan tail. I couldn't wait to show it to Grandpa. He'd be so proud of me! I had caught the biggest fish in the lake, a mighty muskie. One scoop of my arms could land it. I bent forward, then froze. The muskie was so magnificent, so powerful and sleek. Suddenly, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep it. But the hook had pierced the muskie's mouth, and its teeth looked razor sharp. How could I free the barb without getting cut? When I reached out to try, the fish thrashed, and I jumped in fright. If I got it up on the shore, I might be able to free it. I was just bending down again with a powerful surge. The muskie snapped the line, leaped toward open water, and it was gone. I fell back with a splash. It was only then that I noticed Grandpa. He was silhouetted against the sunrise, watching me. "I caught a big fish, Grandpa!" I called out breathlessly. It wasn't a bass, it was a muskie, but I had to let it go. Grandpa nodded. Then he smiled and started toward me. "They put up quite a fight, don't they? Muskies are a whole lot of fish to handle." Instead of stopping at the shoreline, Grandpa walked straight into the water and caught me up in a hug, dripping clothes and all. "After so much excitement, I'll bet you're hungry. How about I fry you up those bass fillets while you dry off and tell me all about your muskie?" I hugged Grandpa back, burying my face in his warm flannel shirt. Then I grinned at him. "Bass for breakfast? Let's eat," I said. "Then, let's go see what else is lurking out in that lake." And there she is. She got another fish at the end of the story. Wasn't that a sweet little story? Kind of a little bit of action and tension in that one, too. Well, we had some other folks joining us, and Angie wanted us to give a nice shout out to our good friends there. Is it Uriel and Itzel? I hope I'm pronouncing those correct. Uriel and Itzel, or Itzel. Hello to both of you. Thank you for joining us here at Storytime. And hello to all of you. So thank you all so very much for joining us this Tuesday. I've actually got to get going. I'm going on my fishing trip this morning. So I will see you all next week. And another Tuesday, another Mr. Tim Storytime. Enjoy the rest of your week. Try to stay cool. Of course, I know all of you are cool, but you know what I mean. Stay cool with all the hot summertime weather. Take care, and we'll see you next time.